Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining the 13th in a series of webinars hosted by the Uniting the Central Coast for Action, a program of the San Luis Obispo Climate Coalition. These webinars are focused on informing and inspiring local clean energy development and resilience. The recordings of prior webinars are available on our website, slowclimatecoalition.org. I am David, your moderator for today. My teammates and I are excited to bring you today's program, which will feature entrepreneurs from 3 different Central Coast startups creating a better climate future. Before we start, we're going to hear from our presenters first, then have a Q&A session at the end. During the presentations, please enter your questions for our speakers into the regular chat stream, not a separate Q&A feature, but into the regular chat stream. I will later direct those questions to one or more of our speakers. And if we can't get to all the questions, we will seek to answer any remaining in writing afterwards. The Slow Climate Coalition deeply appreciates the support of our partner organizations, which helped promote this webinar. We continue to work with our partners and with you and our audience to further the transition to clean energy and develop resilience in our communities. Please share your feedback on today's webinar and suggest subjects you want to hear more about in the future. Today, we have 3 entrepreneurs from startups located on the Central Coast, some of which have recently won pitch competitions or have received significant accolades from industry organizations. First, Working Trees will demonstrate their digital validation of tree carbon sequestration. Next, Climatize will show off how much crowdfunding of community solar and storage they are making possible. And finally, Nextera Tech will explain the novel way they are keeping batteries out of recycling and waste streams. Now, our first speaker is Akash Ahmed, the Chief Science Officer and co-founder of Working Trees. He has 10 years of experience as a remote sensing scientist using instruments deployed on phones, drones, planes, and satellites. He holds a PhD in geophysics from Stanford and was a research scientist at the NASA Goddard Space Flight Center. Akash, how are we putting trees to work anyway?
Thanks, David, for the intro, and thanks to everybody for joining today. I'm delighted to tell you more about how we're putting those trees to work and how potent they can be as a climate solution and an economic benefit to folks managing our working lands as well. So like David said, my name is Akash. I am the co-founder and chief science officer of Working Trees. I'm also an incoming professor of environmental science and natural resource at Cal Poly this fall, where I'll be continuing on as chief scientist. And I'm excited to kind of bridge the academic and industry worlds as a member of the faculty too. So let me tell you a bit more about what we do at Working Trees. Well, we develop low-cost mobile technology to accurately measure tree carbon using the tools already in your pocket. Our approach is vetted by peer-reviewed science. It's easy to use, mobile, native, and user-friendly. It's transparent and more auditable than current other approaches. And it's compliant with standards and certification bodies around requirements for carbon measurement and reporting. Before I dive into what we do at Working Trees, let's talk a little bit about trees and how important they are and what kind of work they're already doing for us. So forests are absorbing about 1/3 of annual human-driven carbon emissions today, but growing new trees can also provide about 1/3 of the climate mitigation that we need to keep warming to manageable levels. And planting trees in degraded areas, such as deforested landscapes or on agricultural lands, is a 5+ gigaton per year solution, according to the IPCC. And this puts it, in terms of impact potential, on par with wind and solar as a climate solution. So not a niche, and an incredibly important lever that we have against climate change. Trees also fix so much more than carbon. When planted in agricultural areas, they've been shown to improve the water holding capacity of the soil, so the water quantity, but also the water quality. They provide habitat for biodiversity and ecosystems. They provide shade and cooling for both people and animals, something that's becoming more important in a warming world, especially in the urban context. They can provide climate resilience, so they limit erosion, they break wind, and that can have positive on-farm or rural local outcomes. And they can also be a source of economic production and livelihoods, right? They can yield timber and still sequester carbon when managed sustainably. They can produce fruits and nuts and forage for livestock. So a potent economic tool as well. They're also one of the cheapest solutions that we have to climate change. So this plot right here is showing on the y-axis the total cost per ton of CO2 storage, and the x-axis is showing the total storage storage potential of different climate solutions in terms of gigatons per year. And what you see here is the afforestation and reforestation bucket is deployable at less than $50 per ton and can still get to 3 or 4 gigatons per year impact potential. This is data from the IPCC and just underscores how cost-effective and scalable a climate solution trees can be. More data from the IPCC showing the impact potential. Basically, the bar chart here is showing the potential contribution to emissions reductions, and you can see that tree planting related activities shown in these boxes are stacking up against wind and solar shown in the top buckets. So again, underscoring trees as a potent climate solution. Unfortunately, right now, forest gain is significantly less than forest loss, right? And we see this here in California with wildfires, with logging and deforestation issues all over the world. And so we have to close this gap, right? We have to kind of balance our forest budget if we're going to come up with some of the most potent climate solutions that we hope to deploy. The good news is there's lots of area available for these types of practices, over 1 billion hectares globally. That is about the size of the United States, and if fully restored, could remove about 1/3 of all cumulative human-emitted greenhouse gas emissions since the 1800s. So absolutely massive potential. I can't overstate the potential. Now, California is recognizing some of this potential in exciting bills that have recently been passed and have recently been gaining some press. I'll just quickly go over some of the nature-based climate solutions targets that were hot off the press, released just last week. In terms of forested areas, the government is looking to roll out forestation programs, adding trees on more than 50,000 acres per year to lands that California manages. So exciting time to be active in forestry and tree planting in California. This is also true for urban lands and agricultural lands. So at a much smaller scale, but still, incredibly important intervention, tree planting projects in urban lands for so many other benefits, including air quality, temperature control, and aesthetics. So exciting time to be active in tree measurement and deployment in California, especially. Just to summarize some of the goals laid out by the recent legislation, 4.2 million trees over the next several years, 30 million acres of lands designated for conservation, and more than 200,000 urban trees per year planted, right? But we need to track progress amongst these initiatives, right? And we can't manage what we don't measure. So how are we going to report out on the progress of these important initiatives if we don't have the tools to do so? Now, let's talk about some of the existing tools that one can use to report out on tree planting carbon sequestration. So you can use satellites, you can use data from airplanes, drones, and ground-based instruments. And all of these have kind of cost and scalability trade-offs that one needs to assess when figuring out the right tool to use for the right problem. Some of them can be pretty expensive. So airborne platforms, while very accurate, can be expensive. Satellite platforms, while free, can sometimes not be that accurate. And oftentimes they still require ground level data to calibrate and validate the models and make sure they're doing a reasonable job of understanding tree carbon sequestration. And they're only really reliable when tree crowns are above a certain size of about 30 square meters. So that can be a pretty mature tree. So what I'm saying is that satellites are going to struggle to track the progress of new tree planting initiatives like the one that California is rolling out because of some of those limitations associated with the instruments. So what we have here is essentially a trade-off between accuracy and scalability at different scales, right? Satellites are amazing tools for large scales. If you want to verify that the forest is still there, they're probably the way to go, but they can struggle at small scales, right? So satellites are great. You can make amazing maps like this, but at the small scales, they're going to struggle. And actually, we don't actually need any fancy technology to do a good job measuring biomass at small scales, right? The way that we do this right now is essentially like this photo. You stick a tape measure around a tree, you record its diameter at about 4 feet height, and then you use what's called an allometric equation to transform that diameter measurement into an estimate of carbon that's based on the species of that tree, right? And this is how it's been done for a very long time. But as you can imagine, this is pretty costly, right? In terms of time, in terms of labor, you need to send crews out, sometimes great distances. They record manual measurements with tape measures and clipboards. You need specialized equipment and training. And this process is time consuming and expensive, right? So this is how the process kind of looks right now. You measure the diameters, you plug into the equations, and you repeat for each tree. These are some of the problems. You can also incur transcription errors, right? If you miswrite down something when you get back to the office, when you're writing it down in the spreadsheet. And this whole process is not very scalable, transparent, or auditable. So this guy's probably thinking, man, is there a better way to do this? And in fact, there is. And that's what we're doing at Working Trees. We're building mobile phone applications to take all of the complexity out of tree carbon monitoring. Our technology has been shown to be more than 90% accurate, backed by peer-reviewed research, and it can be implemented at less than 10% of the cost because you don't need any special equipment, you don't need any special training, and anybody can use our phone app to collect accurate data. So how it works, you basically use your phone to measure the height and the diameter of a tree. The data that you collect gets recorded in our database, and then you can log on to our dashboard to view the summary statistics, like how much total carbon is stored among the trees, how many trees did I measure, what kind of species are there, what kind of area is are these measurements acquired across, and much more. So I'm going to give you a demo of what the app looks like, and you can scan these QR codes on the left to download it on iOS or Android. Here is me measuring a tree on Higuera Street in San Luis Obispo. You're going to see the target right there, the little circle showing the ground detected surface. Then you drop a pin at the base of the tree. You swipe up to set the height. It's giving you instant feedback on the height in inches right there. So about 180 inches. We take photos of all the measurements, so everything is auditable. It can be inspected for quality control. Then you get guided by the yellow lines where to measure the diameter at about 4 feet. You tap the screen twice to set the left and the right-hand sides of the trunk. Take a step back, take another photo, and you're done. That's it. We record the GPS, we record the timestamp, the phone model, some of the other metadata that lets us do our calculations, and that's all it takes. So there you're seeing where the tree was measured on a map. You're seeing the latitude and longitude coordinates and the data that we just collected, including the photos. So what do we do with that data? We take it and we put it in our database, and then you can view it on our monitoring dashboard. So here I'm showing just me cruising through our monitoring dashboard. You click on a site and you can view all of the trees that were measured at a given site. This is a university also in California. Each individual blue pin here shows a tree that was measured. If you click on an individual pin, you'll see an estimate of the amount of carbon stored in that tree. You will see the data that was used to estimate that. You'll see the total carbon stored across all of the trees in our area. And you can also view the calculations for how we determine that number, including all of the equations, the scientific references that we use, and so on. And then if you go and inspect an individual tree, you can actually click on the photo itself to view the data that was collected that we use to make our estimates. So total transparency and auditability in the data collection and display. And we can also have API access and other forms of retrieving data for our customers. So just to quickly summarize what we do and how our app works, We help a user measure tree data that can be used to estimate carbon content, and we record lots of other metadata around that. We're working on feature enhancements, making this kind of more similar to taking a picture rather than actually doing a measurement. We're also working on sampling techniques and embedding them in a AR, augmented reality sense, into the phone application, so you can be guided through like a sampling design that you might want to perform. Here are just some screenshots of the app. I will skip these because I'm getting pretty close to time, and you can view them if you download the app or if you check out our paper at the bottom. I will talk a little bit about the validation of the accuracy that we did to make sure that we're doing a good job collecting accurate measurements. We partnered with Virginia Tech University in 2022 and 2023. We measured about 150 trees at one of their sites next to a dairy, and 3 individuals used the phone app. A different set of individuals used a tape measure, and we compared essentially the measurements collected using the tape measures to the phone apps. And that's what I'm showing here. So this plot on the x-axis is showing the tape measure data that was collected. Each point on this graph represents an individual tree. And then the y-axis is showing the data that was collected using the phone app. So what you notice is a really tight correlation between the phone app and the tape measure data. We have an R² value of 0.95. We have an error of less than an inch. So we're doing a really good job doing this. And if you want to learn more about this, we also analyzed the uncertainties for each individual user, found that all users are able to arrive at the same conclusions, and there are more details about this in the paper. We also have some info about phone models in there and the accuracies of Android versus iOS. So we're really committed to ensuring that our product is scientifically robust and accurate to facilitate transparency and trust in these contexts. So that's really all I have. I want to quickly highlight some kind of milestones that our team has made in the last years. In the last year or so, we've helped farmers plant over 45,000 trees on about 350 acres on 8 US states and in a farm in Brazil. Actually, we've dispersed over $100,000 to land stewards for those activities. And we have been contracted by various customers, some of whom are shown on the bottom of the screen, to monitor over 35,000 acres of projects that they are implementing right now. So we're excited about these collaborations. My email is up there if anything that I said piqued your interest. And I'm going to leave you with a few calls to action here. So if you need to measure trees, or if you know somebody that does, please get in touch. We can help save them effort and time and money. If you have trees that you care about and you want to track their growth and impact and understand their carbon storage, we can definitely help with that too. If you want to offset your carbon footprint and help farmers plant trees and implement regenerative agricultural practices, or your organization does, get in touch with us. We can help you with that. And finally, we're always open to financing and investment opportunities. We're planning to raise a seed round later this year. We've been very successful with grant funding so far, and we continue to benefit from supportive grant funding, but are excited to partner with private capital as well if there are folks who are interested in that type of thing. And in general, we're excited about engaging with the community and catalyzing tree planting and ecosystem restoration projects, both here in California and around the world. So thanks so much for your attention, and happy to take questions at the end.
Thank you, Akash. Awesome coverage of this topic. I want to remind the audience that we are going to do Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions, please type those into the chat stream. Our next speaker, Will Weissman, is the CEO and co-founder of Climatize Earth. He has a 10-year track record in renewable energy projects and was among the Forbes 30 Under 30 in the social impact category in 2023. His company Climatize has been selected to be in Fast Company's 2024 World Changing Ideas, specifically in the Company of the Year and Impact Investing categories. Climatize makes it easy for anyone to invest in renewable energy projects across the U.S., earning up to 10% annually and starting with as little as $10. Will, nearly 4 million has been invested in solar projects to date on Climatize, right?
Yes, sir. Cool. Well, thank you, David. I really appreciate the kind introduction. Thank you all for joining today. As he mentioned, my name is Will Wiseman, CEO and co-founder of Climatize, and we're on a mission to build a global financial network for climate action. And so far, we've been making good strides to that, as David mentioned, both recognized both through the PR as well as other prizes, Keeling Curve Award, as well as Prince William's Earthshot Award. Climatize was really inspired by joining the global climate strikes back in 2019. For context, I've been working in the clean energy industry for the past 10 years. I've built 15 solar farms, worked in large-scale electrical project management, AI for power market analysis with independent power producers. I hold 2 master's degrees in the space, both energy engineering and sustainable energy technologies from the Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm. The catalyst for Climatize really came as I was completing my first master's degree, where I started working with my co-founder. She and I joined the global climate strikes and saw over 100,000 people protesting in the streets of Barcelona. And it was the largest turnout and really, frankly, the biggest display of hope and motivation that I had ever seen when it came to climate action. And yet I have this very vivid memory of standing on a bench and looking out over this sea of people and being struck by this sad realization that we were all going to go home, and the next day, nothing was going to be different. And if you get 100,000 people together and your best option is to make a cardboard sign, that is a glaring problem. And so from that, we really started digging into, what is the underlying problem here? And also, how can we enable everyday people to participate? And so after 250 customer interviews from that strike, we came to our core thesis statement, which is, for many people, climate change feels like an urgent problem, but they feel powerless to make a difference. And when we asked, what is it that everyone could contribute? Capital was one of the common threads that came from that. And so we said, wow, is there actually an opportunity to engage everyday people and enable them to be active stakeholders in the energy transition? I use this image comically to kind of lift the mood, because honestly, I was in SF Climate Week 2 weeks ago, and one of the reoccurring kind of blurbs that I heard from many people was how catalytic the orange sky day was for them. And I imagine for many of you here in California, you lived and experienced the same. And so it's important to realize that these changes are here and now in our communities, not in 2050 in some faraway country. And so ultimately, the problem that we're tackling is one that I lived as a renewable energy developer. Small to medium scale projects really struggle to attract financing. The challenge is that many CDFIs, community banks, credit unions are not educated on how to underwrite these projects. They don't understand it from the economics perspective, and they don't understand how to evaluate the technology. And so there's a very real funding gap for projects ranging between $250,000 and $5 million. And that is really where Climatize has stepped up to fill that funding gap. So, our work is also further accelerated thanks to the mega trends that are aligning here. So for one, right place, right time with the Inflation Reduction Act, creating a massive windfall of capital and incentives to these projects. Many of those credits, especially the tax credits, are particularly aligned with projects of this scale. And then additionally, now transferability of tax credits fundamentally changes the landscape in terms of how you can liquidate those credits and actually lend against those credits as well. What previously was a very illiquid asset, and additionally, if you didn't have $30 million of aggregate tax credits, there was no way that you brought a buyer in for a small family farm. And now we are able to help those projects liquidate their tax credits so that they can really appreciate the entire value of these federal incentives. And additionally, there is this macro trend, which is the growing social movement behind climate action. When I got into the industry in 2014, the conversation just was not there. Fortunately, we have had individuals really kind of step in and champion this cause. I had a chance to work with Greta Thunberg for a year in Stockholm. She actually tested the wireframes of Climatize. those people have helped bring the conversation of climate to the mainstream and made this a kind of here and now topic. And so with that growing demand, we have found early product market fit with Climatize. So this is the most transparent way for you to invest directly in renewable energy projects. We're bringing new projects onto the platform monthly, and you can start investing with as little as $10. To be clear, this is not a donation. This is a fixed interest debt product. You are lending to the project finance of these renewable energy assets. And from that, then in the last 2 months, not 2 months, 2 weeks, we have returned $350,000 of principal plus interest on top of that back to investors. And we can get into kind of how that structure is coming about later in the presentation. So in the last year, we launched on May 9th. So just roughly 1 year, we have already funded over $3.75 million of clean energy projects. First 10 projects through the platform, with the 11th currently raising. This project here raised $100,000 in less than 2 hours. For this other Farmers Hardware, they did $264,000 in 8 days. So that is substantially faster than you would ever go and get that capital from a bank. And so ultimately, in a distributed energy world, there is also a place for distributed finance. And there are areas in which this can be far more effective than going through the traditional centralized channels. So as a success case, I like to point out, this is John and Angela. They have a multi-generational family farmers hardware store in Somerville, Tennessee. They got a solar and battery storage unit completely free by leveraging both grant funding and tax credits. But the problem that they faced was that they needed to actually build the project before they could access either of those incentives. And so we at Climatize have been tapping into essentially Rural Energy for America program grants, which are issued through the USDA, as well as through the tax credits. And by stacking both, you're able to get 100% of the capital stack covered through federal incentives. And again, the problem here is that you have to have that cash on hand to build the project before you can ever go and get the grant. The grant repays after the project has been built and generates 1 month of power production data. And so in this case, we are essentially providing a grant advance for the construction of these projects. Nice thing is, the USDA does technical evaluation of the projects, as well as they require CPA audited financials before those assets ever reach us. And so they come perfectly packaged with third-party DD. And then we also run every project through our proprietary DD that was crafted in partnership with the Department of Energy. So ultimately, what is kind of the market position that we hold, and really how have we innovated in this space? So for one, the tax credit transferability is huge. I cannot underscore that enough. So in part, we're working with CPAs and wealth advisory services. If you have passive income, you can now buy these tax credits from these renewable energy projects. And what that means is, for example, if you have $100,000 of tax liability, you can buy that $100,000 worth of tax credits for anywhere from 89 to 90 cents on the dollar. So you can save 10 to 12% on your taxes. By doing so, we are creating the free cash flow for investors through the savings that they appreciate on their taxes. And if they invest that into a new renewable energy project, they can earn 10% per year for 2 years. And once that new project is built, it becomes a supply of credits on the other side of the market, and creates this very virtuous baton handoff where someone's tax savings ultimately helps create the next project, which in turn helps the next person save on their taxes. So we are excited to announce that we've just finalized a $1.75 million financing for Climatize. So we're excited to really scale the platform and continue to charge towards our goals of $10.5 million of projects funded by the end of the year. And so as a special offer for everybody here in this crowd, by using this QR code, it'll take you to the App Store of your mobile device. And from there, if you use the code NC50TH, you'll get $10 free towards your first solar project investment on the platform. So I encourage you to try it out. Give it a test. We're going to be having our first project in California here in the coming months, as well as we should be hearing back from more projects in both Colorado and throughout the Southeast. We've already been able to do projects in 7 states under this model. And so far, the stories that come from these individuals have been incredibly enlightening. You know, at the end of the day, this is not simply a call to action on climate. In contrast to investing in, say, a carbon credit or an ESG fund, there is a net new renewable energy project in the world that helps an American family reduce their energy costs, all while earning you a competitive yield and at the same time mitigating climate change. And so there are positives across the board. So ultimately, my call to action to you is to help us join in us rewriting the narrative of climate change from one of sacrifice to opportunity. Climatize is transforming everyday Americans into active stakeholders in the energy transition, and we're starting with many of the farmers who serve as the backbone of our society. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Will. That was great. And again, want to remind everyone we're going to do our Q&A session at the end. And in the meantime, if you would post your questions for any of our speakers in the chat stream, and we'll get to those again at the very end. Our final speaker is Penny Lane Case, CEO and co-founder of Nextera Tech, which is leveraging radar technology to identify lithium-ion batteries in the recycling and waste streams. Nextera recently came out on top of San Luis Obispo's Center of Innovation AngelCon Fund Investment Competition. Penny is a Cal Poly graduate, raised in the Redwoods of Northern California, and is passionate about promoting innovation for the good of the environment. She will start off discussing the risks of an improper lithium battery disposal. Penny, I have a question for you. Can I put these in the blue bin? Penny, you're on mute.
Please do not. That is what we're trying to steer people away from. So yeah, batteries have a speech that they are recyclable, but that is only at certified battery recyclers. And so our goal and our mission at Nextera Tech is to help increase education around where you can properly dispose of these very dangerous batteries, and then also keep them out of the waste stream with technology when people fail to do so. So thank you so much, David, for that introduction. My name is Penny Lane Case, and I'm the proud co-founder and CEO of Nextera Tech, where we are ensuring the future of waste management safety. Did you know that every single one of these devices has the potential to cause a catastrophic fire like this one at a recycling facility? And in total, it costs the waste, recycling, and scrap industry over $1.2 billion in damages to the US and Canada alone every single year. That's a very jarring statistic, but it's not just about economics, it's also about the environment. And so when these massive lithium ion battery fires happen, there's a loss of resources, both for the community with that loss of recycling infrastructure, and for the waste management company, where they lose their facility or parts of it, the equipment is damaged, and all of the recyclable material that was going to reinfiltrate that circular economy is completely lost. Another massive problem is the pollution that comes from these lithium ion battery fires. So not only does all of this run off into the water, but they use hundreds of thousands of gallons of water to try and put out these chemical fires, which are near impossible to put out. And so it takes them many, many, many hours, sometimes days, to actually subside the fires. And these are happening in recycling facilities surrounded by plastic. And so all of those particulates are getting into the water and the soil, and then the air pollution. And so there's a massive arm of decarbonization that happens when we're preventing these fires from ever happening. And so we knew we needed to make a giant change in this industry, especially when we saw exactly how prevalent it is. So these are happening all the time, all over the world. And this is because they're being placed in such harsh conditions. So when you toss your cell phone or your smartwatch or your old electric toothbrush that doesn't work anymore, or you just needed an upgrade in your curbside recycling or waste bins, you are exposing it to a world of violence. And so as soon as that recycling or waste truck comes to pick up your bin, it has every opportunity to be punctured or crushed. And when that separator is damaged and those electrons are able to combine, we're able to lead into massive heat and eventually thermal runaway. And so this can be 500 degrees Celsius in a matter of seconds, and it's surrounded by that paper and plastic. And so these fires can react with materials even 3 to 5 feet from them, but they're in the back of a recycling truck surrounded by 30, 40 tons of this material, or in a recycling facility where there's hundreds of tons of this highly flammable material. The other risk is that a lot of recycling is conductive. And so there's an ability for them to also short circuit externally that will also lead to this thermal runaway. And so there's a huge risk when you place the batteries into this kind of environment that we are severely trying to mitigate, because their current solution is to watch for smoke. And so clearly that is not the best answer. They're spending millions of dollars on these reactive technologies that are able to suppress these fires, but they have no solution for actually mitigating them. And so this is where we knew we needed to step in and make a change, not just for the industry, but for the environment. So this started out as a senior project at Cal Poly. It was an interdisciplinary senior project. It was a year long, and we all centered around sustainability. So that is really the crux of Nextera Tech, is helping protect the environment and the people in it. And so as we started investigating the waste industry, we heard about this problem of battery fires, and then we heard that they have no solution. And so we have been working on this for about 2 years now, and we are very proud that we have our prototype, Nextera's PyroTac, on a waste connections vehicle currently. And so our system attaches to the side of these recycling haulers, and it scans the curbside recycling bin before they've ever been collected, and can detect lithium-ion batteries within the bin in a matter of chaos of materials, even when it's full of aluminum. And so this allows these waste collection companies to completely mitigate the risk by identifying the battery before it's been entered into the vehicle. They can leave the bin at the curb, since it is illegal to dispose of any batteries in your curbside bins, especially lithium ion, because they have such high energy density. And so they're even more dangerous than the alkaline or nickel cadmium. And so we give them that information, that deep detection, to be able to mitigate this risk altogether. And so we have management interfaces like the one you see here, where they can see all of their truck routes and where hazards were detected, where they need to go service and collect these bins separately, and then driver interfaces that are very simple. We've done a lot of observation with these drivers. They have a million things going on around them at all times. They already have a few different interfaces inside the cab, and so we alert them very simply so they know whether or not to collect this bin. Like I was mentioning, one of the workflow options for them, especially in California where it's illegal, is that our system would scan the bin, and if a lithium ion battery is detected, the bin would be left for a separate pickup and the household would be alerted. So this is a huge part of it. Like I was saying, we really want to help educate the public, because a big part of why this is such a growing problem is because nobody knows what a lithium ion battery is, what it's embedded in, and then the risk that it causes these waste and recycling streams. And so we give them all of the tools to be able to identify them, and then we also triangulate the closest drop-off location for them, so that we make it a bit easier for them to find this education that everyone so desperately needs in order to do the right thing. I was speaking with Matt Tracy. He is the site superintendent at the Metro South Transfer Station up in Portland, Oregon, and he has seen over 30 fires in 3 years. That is a tremendous amount of risk that he has taken into his facility, which processes the most material on the West Coast. And he said that our product is integral in keeping the waste industry safe on the ground, which is true because we're starting it from ever even happening. The other exciting thing about what we're building is that the technology is truly a non-invasive form of material detection. And so we are able to see materials in that deep detection using our proprietary machine learning model, and we can identify these hazardous materials outside of just lithium ion at many points in the facility. So whether that is on the tipping floor or in the facilities themselves, we can apply our technology to a range of applications to keep them safe throughout the process. And so this is important for multiple reasons. One of them is sometimes the actual recycling facilities will have hauling companies drop off that they don't own. Either they don't own any, or they have multiple different companies delivering material. And so they need to have a way to still protect themselves if the people dropping off material don't have our technology. Another reason is that excuse me, we need to be able to have that second line of defense. In case something is to happen, we want to offer them the highest level of security possible so that they can have that true material visibility. Because this is such a massive and growing problem, and we have created a very novel solution that is truly solving that problem, we have already gotten support from some of the largest players in the industry. This includes Waste Connections, the third largest waste management company in the United States, who we are currently running our beta program with, that you saw, WM, which we will start our beta program with in October, and then the Solid Waste Association of North America, where we presented before, and we're actually headed to our first exhibit at their Western Regional Symposium on Monday, alongside the LA Sanitation, which manages the entire city of Los Angeles' solid waste, and they are very interested in doing beta programs both on their trucks and in their facilities. This is myself and my two co-founders with our first installation of our PyroTech device. So this is on the side of that Waste Connections vehicle, and we're very grateful to be working with them over the next year. And so we're deep in R&D right now. This is an early stage startup, and we're really hitting the ground running. So we wanted to get our hardware on the side of the truck as soon as possible. So we decided to install just the hardware in December of 2023 to make sure that it could last that incredibly volatile environment, because right now we are attaching the technology to the side of the automated side loader arms, which pick up 800 to 1,000 bins a day. And so we put it on the most volatile truck that goes down the back roads of San Luis Obispo County, and it's lasted for 4 months now, which is a huge feat. And we're actually installing all of our sensors this month, and the full system beta with the radar and the power and the interfaces in October. But we recently had an accuracy breakthrough. We were able to jump from 72% to 89% with the highest volume material, which is paper, and the highest energy density batteries, which the waste industry is the most interested in. And so we may be installing our system a bit earlier. And to support all of this installation, the radar R&D is incredibly important as we build out our model with thousands and thousands of scans. And so we have 2 labs and 3 dedicated testing technicians who have already collected over 20,000 scans, which is the recent data dump that boosted our accuracy. And by the end of 2024, we plan to have over 50,000 scans, and some of those, a few thousand of them, will be real environmental data. And so this will really help solidify our machine learning model and get us ready for our July 2025 production run. These are a few more pictures of our beta programs. And so you can see that we went through a few different iterations to make sure that they would last in that environment. And this is the current model that we have. It's been 4 months. You can see how beat up that arm looks, the back plate. It is a rough environment. And so we need our machine to be incredibly rugged, our hardware. And so I'm very grateful that I work alongside Stephanie James, who's a very dedicated mechanical engineer. And then Kylie Landenberger, who has really made this radar R&D efficient by automating it. And so you can see the 2 different labs that we have and our testing interface, which makes everything incredibly simple. So we are very nitpicky with our testing to collect the best data possible. We have multiple shelves. We have different spaces in each shelf that we test every single battery orientation to build that very robust data set in order to build a successful model. Another big part of this is that by promoting education about lithium-ion batteries and helping get them back into the circular economy, we are saving critical minerals like cobalt, graphite, lithium, and many others from being disposed of and ending up in the landfill. And so these are all minerals that we need to save for many different sustainability reasons, and because they're limited and finite, but also because of human rights. And so this is a very important part of what we're doing by using our technology and being able to extract these batteries before they've combusted or made it to the landfill, and then also promoting education so people can, before they ever get to that point, bring them into the certified battery recyclers. I am very proud to work on an all-female team alongside Stephanie James, who is our mechanical engineer and CTO, and Kylie Mandenberger, who's a software engineer and our CPO. We are all Cal Poly alum, and we are very proud to be working and living in San Luis Obispo, where we will be building Nextera Tech to really help create this community and give Cal Poly, the brilliant Cal Poly students, an avenue to come after they graduate, because right now there's not much opportunity, especially in the STEM space, for people that want to stay in SLO. We're green, but we are very determined, and we've built an incredible team of support behind us that are executives ranging from high tech, clean tech, radar, AI, global scaling, a plethora of industries that truly support us from the ground up, and a legal team. We actually just filed our first patent yesterday. It's a non-provisional full patent for our truck application with our technology, and we'll be filing our second provisional patent next month. And so this team has done an incredible job of making sure that our proprietary technology is protected. So we're very, very grateful for all of the support we have alongside the Cal Poly Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. We truly could not do it without them. We know that the future is safe, sustainable, and responsible, because we know that the future is Nextera Tech. Very, very grateful to be here. I am very excited to take questions. And my ask to you today is that you recycle right. So on the screen, you can see two different QR codes. One is a SLO specific recycling search, and another is the US in general recycling search for people tuning in from out of town. And so these are where you can go and search any material. It doesn't even need to be recyclable, it doesn't need to be e-waste, and figure out where you can put it to be a responsible citizen and protect our environment and our communities. So I'll leave this up for just a second so people can take pictures. I'll also try and send it out and get it on the website afterwards. But it is very important that you do your part, even if it means taking a few extra minutes out of your month to bring your recycling to the correct disposal site. Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You're muted, David.
David.
Not a day goes by. Thank you very much, Penny. And that was very inspiring from all three. Let's face it, there's a lot of less than great news out there about the climate, but it's really inspiring to see these entrepreneurs doing real problem solving. So thank you very much. And all from the Central Coast. I just want to remind everyone that I did put those recycling info links on the chat stream, and would like to continue to invite you to ask any questions you have for our three presenters in that same chat stream. And with that, I'm going to start going through some of the ones that have already come in. I know, Akash, thank you. You have answered some of them, but I'm going to go ahead and repeat those and give you an opportunity to verbally either restate what you did put already in the chat stream or expand if you want to. And the first one is it helpful to measure trees in your own personal property to add to your data pool? So beyond the actual measurement of the trees, is it helpful to the model?
Yeah, it's a good question, because it is helpful to the model to collect, more data from the machine learning perspective. However, we have teams of people collecting hundreds and thousands of measurements, so we certainly appreciate any extra data collection in the backyard that you want to do, and happy to support those efforts. but we're on it on the data collection side of things ourselves, but would be happy to enlist you as a collaborator.
Great. And again, for you, Akash, do you have to keep measuring trees over time to show changes in carbon capture? And is there a sweet spot as far as frequency goes?
Yeah. So you do have to measure over time to understand changes. And the good thing about our app, though, is we kind of have a sampling routine in there, so you don't have to measure every single tree if you're interested in a larger area or an area. You only have to measure about 20% of them by how some of this math around the statistics work out. So yeah, you do have to measure over time. Some of that can be supplemented with other tools like satellites or drones. And then we also have the sampling routine in there so that you don't have to measure every tree.
Great, thank you. Question for you, Will. What's the bigger bottleneck on the two sides of your marketplace? Is it the getting capital, getting investors, or getting projects to invest in?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So we have 1,347 projects worth about $135 million queued up for this year. And then $2 billion looking out to 2027. So for us, it's more so on the capital availability side. But given we also had a year during all of our regulatory approvals to build that pipeline and build those partnerships. So we've worked on that side of the marketplace for longer and are now really just in the last year stimulating the demand side. So yeah, I would say capital availability is where it comes, but I think it's also more of an education element than purely just people wanting to invest. It's really because the channel that we're providing is new and people are learning that, hey, I actually can invest directly in these assets. There is an element of needing to do, customer education for them to see the value of the asset class and the notes themselves.
Will, next one's for you again, and this kind of goes to a comparative. How does Climatize differ from the original business model of Mosaic?
Sure. Yeah. So I had the pleasure of having lunch with the chief investment officer of Mosaic about a month ago. And with them, they were just very early in the journey. Some of the core fundamental enablers for Climatize just flat out didn't exist back then. So for one, regulation crowdfunding just didn't even exist. That was the Jobs Act 3, 2015. And then additionally, some of the enabling technologies like Plaid to streamline bank integrations, so they were operating in a legal gray area as well as having to kind of build multiple companies to be able to enable what they were doing. Whereas now we can, work with Plaid and they own that part of our tech stack and really make our lives a lot easier. Whereas Mosaic needed to do a lot of that themselves. And then additionally, they were really looking at the residential market. So essentially resi solar projects, rolling those up. Now they currently, do about $1.34 billion a year of asset-backed securitizations. So kind of different model in that we're also targeting a different market segment, kind of really the small to medium scale, both commercial, industrial, and community solar markets. And then after that, energy efficiency and EV charging. So we see ourselves building into more of a kind of technology agnostic platform while they were really focused on resi. And then finally, the unlock of tax credit transferability, back then, that was part of why, residential solar was a better fit, is because you had less of the kind of need for an outside partner to absorb those tax credits. At the scale that we're operating, if the underlying business doesn't have the tax appetite, then, they need to bring in a party. We can facilitate that and add another revenue stream for Climatize. So those are just a couple of the ways in which we differ.
Okay, thank you. Next question is for you, Penny. So there's a multi-part question. The Pyrotech scans the bin, leaves the bin for a separate collection. And then how is the household alerted? Do they have to have an app? And who ultimately takes the rejected bin and to where?
Absolutely. So no, you there's no app. We wanted to make this accessible to absolutely everyone. And so right now, the waste management companies have communication with homeowners that you've signed up for, whether that's email or text message. Some people may still be on a letter base, but many people have moved over to digital alerts. And so we actually integrate with the waste management companies, and then they send out the education that we've built for them. And so it's all through them and their designated system that they have set up with the homeowner already. The second part of that question was who takes the rejected bin and to where? And so this rejected bin in a workflow, it really depends on how their workflow needs to operate. We're trying to optimize it for them. They run on a very lean schedule, and so we do not wish to cause any unintended interruptions. And so many of them have said that they would collect it in a separate pickup themselves. So the waste management company would collect it in a separate pickup, and then they would take it to a separate part of their facility and dump it to find the battery before they put it into the general recyclables that they're collecting, because the tipping floor can be overwhelmingly crowded. And so there's separate space, they'd be able to dump it separately.
Great, thank you. Next question for you again. And this person pointed out that they have been collecting up batteries and putting them into a bag and taking them roughly once a year to the proper location, disposal or recycling center. Should they be making more frequent trips? Is it dangerous to keep these old batteries inside their home?
Absolutely. So I would say for safety, you'll definitely want to make sure the batteries are being stored in a cool, dry place, and that you're taping the terminals with masking tape to prevent short circuits. I would suggest placing them in like a designated battery bin in your house. And if you have the ability to dispose of them more frequently every few months, that is definitely going to ensure that they're less danger to your household. You know, the chemicals can leak. If they are in risk of overheating, that can cause thermal runaway. And so while it's not something that I would put as like a red flag risk, it would be more effective if you did take them in every few months, just so that it minimizes potential hazards.
Great, thank you. Next question is for you, Will. Is the minimum investment to start $10? And is there a more typical or average amount people invest in a given project?
Sure. Yeah. So $10 is the minimum. Average check size is over 6,000, and the average account size is over 30,000. So just because it has small minimums is not how people are using the platform.
Next one for you again, Will. Can my self-directed IRA funds be invested in your projects?
Yep. Yep. So we can support self-directed IRAs, LLCs, trusts, really whatever flavor under the sun. So I encourage you to just reach out to me. And, you know, while we're still working on making the entity streamlining or entity onboarding a little more streamlined, happy to support any way you want to invest.
Next one is a question for you again, Will. How liquid will the Climatize investments be? Are they like a CD or an annuity? Are there any early withdrawal penalties?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, I think as with any investment, you should expect to hold it to term. Generally, what we've seen on the last offerings are 2-year terms. Now, in practice, we've seen that, you know, the projects, they're able to monetize their grant as soon as the project is installed and generates 1 month of power production data. So that has more like about a 6 to 9 month turnaround period, while then the sale of the tax credits is a little bit more seasonal, or as we reach scale, we can aggregate those and sell them to corporates. So with respect to that, realistically, more like a 1-year term as for liquidity on those offerings. And there is no ability to withdraw. So unlike a CD, you couldn't necessarily withdraw with penalties. However, we're seeing, you know, pretty quick turnaround times in terms of recycling principal with interest on that.
Next question for you again, Will, having to do with tax credits. How
Sure,
will the
yeah.
tax credit information get communicated to investors? Is it in the form of a 1099, S1, or something else?
Sure. Yeah. So as for tax liability on any investments through our platform, you're issued a 1099 INT because it's an interest payment. So with that, it is actually the solar project developers who will be sending you your tax documentation. We as a platform do not provide that. That is their obligation. And then with respect to the tax credits, this is something that we're bringing online in particular with more accredited investors, given kind of the tendency for them to have the passive income. However, any investor, if you do have that passive income, so through real estate or you're a partner in an LLC, for example, that is qualifying, in which case you could buy those credits. And so we have bundles of credits as small as about $30,000 and also working on a $600 million one. So there's kind of a whole gambit there, depending upon your calibration of how many tax credits you're trying to buy.
The next question is posted for Nextera, but I think it's a question that I'd like all three of you to answer. So starting with Nextera, actively fundraising, question mark? And if yes, what's the size of the round?
Awesome. So we actually just closed our pre-seed round. We were seeking, thank you, we were seeking $350,000 and we oversubscribed to 650. So it was a very successful effort. It will allow us to put lots of funding into our research and development on the radar and software side and make some key hires in those two spaces. So we're looking forward to everything to come, but we are also projected to raise our next round around October, and that will be about a $2 million round. Also, David, real quick, after they both answer, I think we forgot a question from Barry just above the Climatize tax credit that we can come back to.
Yeah, Akash, how about you?
Yeah, we have been very fortunate with grant funding and successful with grant funding so far. So it has kind of put off the necessity for raising private capital for us. That said, we think we can go faster and have a bigger impact. And so we're looking at raising sometime later this summer and would be happy to explore that with mission aligned. We're really looking for mission aligned investors and collaborators. So if that's you, we'd be happy to chat. And as far as round size, we're looking at about a $2 million investment, which can come down a little bit if some of the grants that we have out for review end up coming back positive. So around that 2 million size, and mission aligned investors are our friends. So thank you and get in touch.
Will.
Yeah, we just wrapped up our round. We just closed out a $1.75 million financing round led by Myriad Ventures. And so we are not raising. We have a line of sight to break even in February of 2025. So at that point, we'll likely go to raise a priced seed round. And that will be mainly for just going and scaling and ultimately market share acquisition, being a network effect driven business. We see speed to market being kind of one of our core advantages in these early days. So yeah, we'll look to raise that kind of maybe Q2 of 2025, but kind of based on where we're trending, we're not in really any need of capital at the moment. So can kind of be opportunistic on that front.
But of course, to some extent, as a startup, you're always raising, if you will, right? Maybe not actively, but you're always interested in hearing from investors, particularly mission aligned. I did skip over inadvertently over one question, and it might be specific to waste collections, but that's the firm here in San Luis Obispo that does the curbside pickups. The statement was that they leave bins, they leave a tag rather on the bin. So if they did detect a lithium-ion battery, leave a tag. And then the question was, do they ask the homeowner to come out and remove the legal item? Or what do you know in the way of at least waste collections strategy on this?
Absolutely. So some companies will also have the driver get out and tag the bin, like in Slow. That's great. Then even if people aren't checking their digital sites, they can still access why their bin was not picked up that morning, which nobody likes to deal with. And that's the pain point that we're pushing is no one wants to deal with their bin. And so, yes, some companies would ask the homeowner to remove the illegal item. Part of what we're doing right now is that now that our accuracy is growing at a exponential rate, we are working to triangulate the location. And so they can tell the homeowner where exactly the battery is to make it a bit more efficient for that process. Really depends on the company. Smaller mom and pop companies may want to take that burden off of the homeowner and take the bin and do it themselves. But ultimately, they want to have that battery removed so that they can do a traditional pickup instead of coming around with a flatbed and collecting those bins.
Okay, thank you. Will, another question here for you. Does Climatize monetize the projects through cash flow generated from selling electricity from these DERs, distributed energy resources?
Yeah. So yes. So we monetize. We take 5% of the funds raised, 0.5% annually for servicing the debt notes, and then 2% of the tax credit transaction value. Now, all of those costs are passed on to the project developers. So you as an investor have zero investor fees. And essentially why this has been kind of the business model fit is because, for the project developers, they are able to take developer fees off of every project. And so their challenge is that if these projects do not have the capital to go and build it, and then in turn monetize the grant and the tax credits, then the developers get no money. It's a very binary outcome for them. So they would rather pay the interest on the debt. The actual renewable energy developers, the one who raises the money on behalf of these small businesses, they would rather pay the interest and take that cut from their profit on the project than do no project at all. And so we do not monetize through the sale of the electricity. And actually, the repayment does not come from the sale of the electricity. In this case, it all comes back both through grant, sale of tax credits, and then the developer pays the interest out of their developer fees. We have done financings of operating projects where the interest was paid through the sale of the power. It was just a little bit more of a high friction process in terms of underwriting the creditworthiness of those small businesses. And we found a very nice, repeatable, scalable model in these projects that had these grants, but couldn't ultimately monetize them without that upfront cash.
Next one's for you again, Will. Are all of Climatize's projects configured as behind the meter? Are some in front of the meter? 160 million project was mentioned, which I assume was a massive front of meter project, question mark? Or
yeah, yes. So all the projects on the debt side of the platform are sub $5 million. So they're all behind the meter in that instance. Everything that's come onto the platform to date has been behind the meter. Now, on the tax credit side, we're not capped by some of the same regulation crowdfunding rules. And so we can engage with much larger projects and help them monetize their tax credits, in which case those would be front of the meter utility scale projects. And so, as we scale to larger projects, some in particular community solar will be front of the meter, while currently all have been behind the meter.
Great, thank you. All right, one last call. For any questions, please post them in the chat stream. While waiting, I'll just want to remind everyone that when the session is over, you'll give an opportunity to give feedback on this webinar, so please do that. And if you can or want, please suggest any future subjects you'd like to hear more about. All right, I think going once, going twice. We're closed. Oh, okay. It was 3 presentations were outstanding, showing up there. Anyway, thank you very much to everyone for joining. Thank you to my 3 speakers for agreeing to take your time Again, this is really a treat for the rest of us to see all the incredible work you guys are doing. It's hard. Innovation's not easy. And we're really happy you're taking shots on goal, if you'll appreciate the analogy. And so with that, everyone, we are closed for today. Thank you.
Thank you, David, for being such an incredible moderator.